Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me so much pleasure to welcome all of you on behalf of India Habitat Center and Professor Benoy K Behl. Today's talk is the 32nd in his monthly series, Glimpses of Culture. Professor Benoy K Behl has spent 48 years lost in his mission of documenting the art and culture of India and of the whole of Asia. The result is a breathtakingly wide coverage, sensitively carried out. We see the philosophic basis of this art and the development of its traditions over the centuries. Professor Behl brings to us a vision in which we are clearly able to see the roots of this ancient art and its development over the centuries. This is his great contribution to the field. Recently, he has taken us to the earliest art in the Indus Valley and Maurya periods. He then took us to the philosophic fundamentals of this art tradition, which were formulated by the 2nd century BCE. Last month, he showed us the sophisticated developments of art which took place in the urban culture of the Eastern Deccan in the beginning of the first millennium. Today, he takes us to a world of grace, where beauty of form is used to transform us and to reveal the truth which underlies creation. Ladies and gentlemen, Benoy K Behl speaks to us today on the masterpieces of the Deccan. Thank you for your attention, and over to Professor Benoy K Behl now.
Thank you very much, Sujata Chatterji. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. A great pleasure to be with all of you again. The final truth which is sought in Indian philosophy, the eternal truth which is sought in Indian philosophy, beyond the multiplicity of the forms of the world, the ephemeral forms of the world, the passing forms of the world, is believed to be nirgun, arupa, formless, beyond the world of forms, without qualities, beyond it all. Therefore, the earliest art of the Buddhists and Jains, the stupas, were practically formless, so that in that moment of meditation, in that moment when we were seeking the truth, we would not be distracted by forms. As a matter of fact, the tradition lives on till today. In fact, if you were to go to the most revered Shivalinga of Tamil Nadu, in the Chidambaram temple, there is a silver curtain in front of the linga. And when you part that curtain, what do you see? Nothing at all. That is the Upanishadic presentation, the truth which is beyond all forms. Now, by the 1st century CE, deities were presented in Indian art to provide us something we are familiar with, instead of the abstract concepts which we were trying to understand of what is beyond form, which is what is beyond all that we know and see. We were presented deities in human form, something which we could relate to, something which would help us on our journey. And in the last few occasions, we have been discussing the great challenge for Indian art to help us achieve a knowledge of something which is beyond all this, beyond the material world, and that also through forms, through art which is created, forms which are created, through these forms to help us actually transcend the forms, the world of forms. An amazing challenge which Indian art, ancient Indian art, took on absolutely wonderfully. And how did it do this? Presented us idealized forms which are not an attempt to depict the photographic reality of the world, forms which presented the idealized grace which underlies all that there is, forms that took us beyond the material world, forms which in fact helped us forget the material world by transporting to a world of sheer grace, of sheer beauty. In fact, in the Indian philosophy of aesthetics, it is believed that our response to something truly beautiful, whether in nature or in art, is akin to Brahmanand itself, the bliss of salvation itself. Therefore, form was then used in Indian art to help to carry us beyond form itself. And the joy of this discovery, the joy of the response to such exquisite art and such exquisite, graceful forms, that was used to help create peace within us. Peace which would then make it easier for us to think, to be able to see, to be able to discern. For it is in silence and in peace that we are able to see, that we are able to discern. And therefore, we are better prepared in silence and in peace to continue our journey towards true knowledge. Now, in today's film, we are going to be looking at masterpieces of such art in the Deccan. And truly, it is marvelous to see the kind of art which was created around the 5th, 6th century in the Deccan. Take a prime example. Take the Parinirvana of the Buddha in Cave 26 of Ajanta. Absolutely marvelous example of the most sophisticated art. Of course, it was in subsequent centuries, many centuries later too, it was made in many countries of Southeast Asia and in Sri Lanka. But there is a key difference. When this was created in the 5th, 6th century at Ajanta, it was made with a very special perspective of the like which is very rare to be seen anywhere at all. The position of the worshipper is expected to be at the feet. Now, this colossal form, this Parinirvana figure of the Buddha on his side, lying on his side, which is about 20 feet, is made in such a way that if you stand near the feet, the whole figure, including the head, which is 20 feet away from you, are all in perfect perspective. In fact, if you were to take a photograph of the figure from the center, the head looks bloated and out of shape. Amazing, absolutely amazing to see that such care could be taken, that such art could be created. That, of course, does not happen in the later figures of the Parinirvana that we see made in so many parts of the world. There, when we stand at the feet look huge, and the face of the Buddha, that most important face that we look upon, is far, far away. So this is the kind of art, this is the kind of thoughtfulness behind the art which happened. We could look at Elephanta, the, uh, the Mukha-linga, where the three faces of Lord Shiva are made on the linga. Amazing. What an atmosphere is created in that cave with light coming from distant doorways, the silence of it, the atmosphere of it, the beauty of the depiction. Absolutely amazing. So, allow me to share the pleasure of these masterpieces. And My many thanks to India Habitat Center for this yet one more opportunity to share the beautiful art of India and Asia with all of you. My grateful thanks to Doordarshan. It's amazing to see that in this world where television setups are so taken up with viewership and TRPs, that Doordarshan for the past many years have stood by their commitment as a public broadcaster and have actually financed the making of such deeply researched and extremely serious work. My many thanks to them. And Sushant, I would request you to please read them. Thank you so much.
From the 1st century onwards, deities were created in Indian art for meditation and worship. The belief was in the oneness of all of creation. The separated forms of the world were Maya, or illusions. The truth was beyond all forms. However, the deities provided familiar shapes which were easier for the mind to grasp. By the 5th century, sublime deities were made in central and north India. Though they were in human form, their purpose was to move us, through their grace and beauty, to transcend the world of forms, to leave behind our attachments and desires. From the 2nd century BC in the western Deccan, hundreds of great shrines and monasteries had been carved out of the heart of the mountains in the Western Ghats. The magnificent site of Ajanta was in the horseshoe-shaped gorge of the Vaghora River. In the mid-5th century, under the rule of the Hindu Vakataka kings, it saw renewed activity. As in the Indic traditions seen earlier, in the western and eastern Deccan, feudatories, ministers and even queens freely followed the Buddhist faith. There were no religious divisions, and the patrons of the Buddhist caves sometimes proclaimed their descent from Hindu gods. The facades of earlier Chatterjis presented a grand simplicity. The second phase of Ajanta brings us a changed world. Cave 19 of the mid-5th century is the first Chatterjih, or hall of meditation, of the Vakataka period. The facade of the hall is thickly populated with divine forms. The horseshoe-shaped window above the entrance, based upon wooden architectural models, has become more elaborate. On either side of the window are made attendant figures. They stand in graceful postures, and the treatment is delicate. Buddhas are made flanking the entrance to the cave. On the right, the Buddha offers to his son Rahula his rightful inheritance, the promise of salvation or Buddhahood. On the left of the entrance, he makes a similar gesture of the offer of grace, the promise of enlightenment. The figures have a humanity and sensitivity which gives Ajanta a special place in Indian art. The garments are diaphanous. There is a grace and an inward look, which is the hallmark of the sculpture of this period. A Nagaraja and a Nagini with an attendant figure are among the finest sculptures of Ajanta. These are serpents made in human form, and such images come from the earliest times in Indian art. They have that rapt concentration and inward look which catches us immediately and takes us to a place of peace deep within. The figures are closely similar in style to the ones at the Hindu temple at Deogarh in Uttar Pradesh. Earlier, the interior of the hall of meditation was simple and unadorned. The focus was on the final truth, which was formless. Now it is the beauty of form which serves to reveal the grace which underlies creation. Peace is now created by beauty and harmony around us. Though the stupa continues to be made, it is very considerably elaborated. The Buddha stands at the front to bestow his blessing upon the worshipper. Cave 26 is a grand Chatterji, perhaps the last excavation at Ajanta. It is much larger and more elaborate than Cave 19. The Buddha inside is again made within a stupa and sits with pendant legs upon a throne. The Mithya Buddha, who is as yet to come in the world, is often made in this fashion. The circumambulatory path around the shrine is elaborately carved. On the left wall is a marvelous depiction of the Buddha's victory over the armies of Mara. These forces represent the turbulence and confusion of the mind. Mara's daughters below represent our desires, which keep us bound to a life of pain in the material world. The Buddha is serene as he rises above all these and is ready for enlightenment. A profoundly moving scene is that of the Parinirvana of the Buddha, when he finally achieves release from the mortal world. This is one of the grandest, yet most sensitive depictions in all of Buddhist art. The figure of the reclining Buddha is about 22 feet long and is best seen from near his feet, the appropriate position for the devotee. The perspective has been perfectly made for viewing from this spot. Ananda, his grieving disciple, also sits at his feet, desolate at the loss, forlorn. In the solemnity and grandeur of the noble achievement of the Parinirvana, Ananda adds a human touch which is unforgettable. The same sentiment is echoed in some of the seated figures of monks below the Buddha. Above, heavenly musicians celebrate the great moment of the Buddha's release from the world of illusions. A number of grand viharas for the residence of monks were excavated in this period. These are considerably larger than the earlier viharas and are profusely painted. In fact, practically every inch of wall and ceiling space was originally covered with fine paintings. Early literature has many references to such halls of murals. These at Ajanta are extremely valuable as they are the only surviving significant body of early paintings. These exquisite murals are also amongst the greatest treasures of the entire heritage of Indian art. The addition of shrines in the viharas is a new feature which is seen in this period at Ajanta. The resident monks could now worship the Buddha and meditate before him in the vihara itself. The shrine has an antechamber which prepares us for entry into the sacred space. The growing complexity of iconography is seen. Besides the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, in the upper floor of Cave 6, the shrine also has 6 Manushi Buddhas who preceded Gautam Buddha. The Buddha figure and other sculptures here recall the grace and transcendent qualities of the art of the Gupta Empire further north. The forms are more full-bodied here. While the hammer and chisel sounded in the gorge of the Vaghora River, work was also taken up again at the site of Kanheri within present-day Mumbai. In the late 5th and 6th centuries, a number of older caves were modified and new excavations were made. Kanheri became the largest rock-cut cave site in India, with over 100 caves. On either side of the veranda of the early Cave 3 were made colossal Buddhas, over 22 feet high. This is the beginning of the tradition of Brihad or colossal Buddhas, which spread near and far. They display the gesture of the bestowing of grace. Vidyadharas bring garlands to them. By the 4th century, the method of yoga or Yog Tantra was established in Indic thought. It was a graded path of evolution through discipline and meditation. In the art of the Buddhist faith, Cave 90 of the early 6th century has the earliest representation of the Mandala, which represents such a graded path. The Buddha at the center represents the final or universal truth. The Buddhas and other figures around him are the personifications of wisdom and compassion, which lead us to the ultimate knowledge at the center. In Cave 41 of the late 5th or early 6th century is the first known depiction of the Bodhisattva Avalokitesvara with 11 heads. The 10 Bodhisattva heads leading to the final Buddha head above represent the gradual ascent to enlightenment. At Aurangabad, not very far from Ajanta, another group of caves was excavated in the 6th century. The earlier caves here are contemporaneous to Ajanta and seem to continue the sculptural traditions of that site. There are very fine carvings seen on the pillars of Cave 3. In the later caves here, sculptural panels are increasingly used to carry the iconographic message. A litany of Avalokitesvara and panels of other bodhisattvas are made at the entrance to the circumambulatory passage of the shrine. Further inside, to the left of the entrance to the shrine itself, is made a panel of Tara with attendants. These are early depictions of the increasing number of deities which were being created in the Yogacarya development of Mahayana Buddhism. The worshipper meditated upon the aspects of the Buddha that were personified in these deities. On the left wall of the shrine is made a dancer with 6 musicians. This is one of the finest sculptural depictions in the caves of this period. As seen from the 1st century onwards, the depiction of deities was a pan-religious development in Indic art. The most wondrous Hindu excavation of the 6th century is on Gharapani Island in Mumbai harbour. The island is popularly known as Elephanta on account of a large stone elephant which the Portuguese had found at the entrance.
Well, Elephanta is one of the great wonders of early Indian art. It's totally mysterious to us. We don't know who paid for it. We imagine somebody must have, that maybe it had a royal patron. Scholars cannot decide who commissioned it, when exactly it was executed, or for what reason. These are not known to us, may never be known to us. What are left are these damaged but hugely impressive panels carved out of this sort of basalt, this sort of difficult rock that doesn't allow much detail. And these figures are among the most impressive that we have. And we still experience the mystery of this 3-faced torso of Shiva emerging out of the mountain as we walk into the great cave.
The Shiva cave here is dug out of the rock on a vast scale. It is about 125 by 125 feet. The entrance is unadorned, so also is the spacious hall inside. It is an effect of monumental scale and large free spaces in between great sculptural panels. To the west of the mandapa is the main shrine with a linga and yoni, representing the unity of all creation. The final completeness which is beyond the world of forms. The shrine has entrances on all 4 sides, flanked by monumental dwarapalas. They are graceful and have the fullness of the earlier forms in the Western Indian caves. The heavy lower lips and the rapt inward concentration are characteristic of the depictions at Elephanta. On the south wall of the cave is made a profoundly moving representation of Lord Shiva. The light coming from the 3 distant entrances of the caves creates a dramatic setting. The image emerges from a dark void as a manifestation of the unmanifest eternal. It is made on a 3-foot-high platform and rises another 18 feet above that. The image is more a Mukha-linga than a figure of Shiva. The face on the proper right is the terrible or wrathful representation of Lord Shiva. He has snakes and skulls in his hair, an angry brow and twisted moustache. On the proper left is the blissful and gentle face of Shiva as Vamadeva, or of Shiva's spouse Parvati. The central face presents the deeply contemplative aspect of the Lord. The stillness beyond all movement, the peace of deep knowledge. The cave has 8 monumental depictions of the themes of Lord Shiva made in panels. On the left of the great central image is Shiva's manifestation as Ardhanarishwar. Here we see the unification of the male and female principles in creation. Most reliefs were considerably damaged when the Portuguese military garrison here used to practice artillery fire in the hall. On the right is the depiction of Shiva as he catches the personified river Ganga in his hair on her descent from heaven. He breaks the terrible impact of her fall, which could wash away the earth. The art of Elephanta presents the inward search, which is the hallmark of this time, known as the Gupta and post-Gupta periods in Indian art. There is a sense of great dynamism contained in the stillness. In the words of art historian J.C. Hall, these figures convey the essential oneness of the human and the divine. Greek gods are simply men and women, albeit idolized. These figures are superhuman, true divinities. The link with the human world achieved by plastic form in a way never perhaps equaled. The journey of Indian art has brought us to a point where the human form is used to convey ideas which transcend our mortal existence. The subject of the art is the depiction of the essence and not only the optical reality of the world. As stated in the ancient treatise, the Chitra Sutra, the depiction of harmony and beauty has a transforming influence upon the viewer. When we respond to beauty, for that moment, we come out of ourselves. Our worldly cares and concerns are left behind. In that moment, we are absorbed in the grace which is everywhere in creation.
Thank you, Sushant, for an excellent screening there. This period of time in the Deccan is an amazing one, and it brings the seeds of so much which were to follow in all over Asia. There's so much that was born here or seen for the first time here, which was then subsequently seen in so many countries, so many parts of Asia. We already spoke of the wonderful, colossal Parinirvana, the amazing Parinirvana, with the perspective which truly, I think that is something which needs to be spoken about much more. Truly, it needs to be much better known than it is. The way the perspective is made perfectly to give an aesthetic and pleasing view to the devotee at the feet. The other thing, of course, is that it's a colossal figure. And this is a period of time when there are other colossal figures being made in the caves of the 5th and 6th century. This is the beginning of the making of a brahad, or grand, colossal figures in art, which spread to so many places northwards and across the Silk Route and to Southeast Asia and other parts of South Asia. It is here that we see the beginnings. We also see the first mandala. Today, mandalas are considered so important, such an essential part of understanding Buddhism. The first Buddhist mandala is actually seen here at Kanheri in the beginning of the 6th century. The first Avalokitesvars, the first 11-headed Avalokitesvar is seen here. Taras are seen here. So this is a period of time in the Deccan which deserves to be much more closely looked at, and if I may say so, enjoyed in all its beauty and grace. That has been the case. Of course, the Deccan is a glorious place of trade since even more ancient times. It received visitors from Greece and from so many other places, and there was enormous trade. And it is trade and the coming together of people from different lands, which brings about this marvelous cultural beauty, this marvelous energy of culture. So this is the Deccan. And I would be happy to speak more about these things and to answer your questions. I will request Sujata to please read out your questions from the chat box.
Yes, thank you, Benoy. Before I go on to the chat box, I'd like to announce our next screening. That would be on Saturday, the 27th of April. And our next film is called Art of the Early Chalukyas. This would be about the earliest surviving large body of structural temples. So please mark it in your calendars. The time would be 6 p.m. We'd love for all of you to be with us on 27th April on a Saturday. Thank you very much. And maybe, Benoy, you'd also like to announce about our upcoming course, which is offline instead of online.
Yes. Ever since the beginning of the pandemic, I've not given the course Indian Art, History and Appreciation in person because of the precautions of the pandemic. Now on the 6th and 7th of April, for the first time, the course is going to be given again at India Habitat Center, Saturday and Sunday, 2 full days. You may like to enjoy that.
And if I may mention, if anybody is interested in the course, if you would like to write to us at benoy.behl@gmail.com and later try to put that in the chat box. That's Benoy, BENOY .BEHL@gmail.com. Then we'll take it further from there and tell you what to do. Thank you. There's a comment. There are no questions as yet. It's a comment from Krishna Bolli saying excellent.
Thank you so much, Krishna. It's always a joy to have you sharing these films here. Thank you.
Jane Sochiat saying so beautiful and thank you so much for your kindness.
Such a pleasure to have you join us. Thank you for gracing the occasion.
John Palka. My understanding is that the earliest holy spaces for worship were centered on natural objects like rocks, trees, perhaps waterfalls. Why do you suppose there was a transition to human-made art objects?
Of course, we go back a long way. In fact, we can even go back to prehistoric times, and we go back to the world of nature, and such beautiful, absolutely beautiful places were selected even for the making of prehistoric paintings. The relationship with the natural world, which you, John, are so aware of, so beautifully aware of. The relationship with the natural world, the appreciation of natural beauty was always there. And such were places, perhaps, of the earliest worship. Even today, when we see a beautiful sunrise, in many ways we worship. So that is something which continues till today. The natural desire is to find ways of seeking that knowledge, of traveling along the path towards that knowledge. And the Chitra Sutra, the earliest known treatise on art making, says that the purpose of ancient Indian art was very clear. It was made to help us on this path towards knowledge. And in that, the earliest manifestations of the place to meditate on were, in fact, the amazing concept of the stupa and the linga, objects which would not distract us with all the human forms around us, but would in fact take us away from the noise and clamor of the material world, and therefore on this peaceful journey. Thank you.
Sushmita, the Elephanta figures' faces have distinctly larger lower lips, very different from other depictions of Shiva figures elsewhere. Any explanation?
They would be, these are the regional variations, and they have distinctly larger lower lips, and very beautiful, very beautiful faces. But there are regional variations all over the country. You might also notice sometimes lower lips being larger in South India. Thank you.
Sushmita, any influence from Africa?
Not that we are aware of.
Well, I think that's about it. There don't seem to be any more questions, or should we give it a second or two? Because sometimes when we are logging out, somebody puts in a question. In the meanwhile, maybe I'd just like to inform all of you that if you'd like to catch any of our earlier sessions, I've put down our YouTube name, which is Benoy Behl, and I've also put the email ID in case anybody is interested in the course. Then you could write to us, and then we'll guide you on what to do. I don't think there are any more questions.
My thanks to India Habitat Center again, and to you, Sushant, for another excellent screening. And ladies and gentlemen, it was a pleasure to be with you. Thank you.